We will talk about the power of habits today. You know, you must have wondered how is it that there are some people who can actually transform themselves and change almost overnight, while there are others who keep struggling and keep trying. I mean, is there something which they have which others don't, or is there a formula to it? We've all heard of Raghuram Rajan's famous quotation, "I do what I do," and he does it pretty well. But today, with due respect to him, we're not going to focus on what I do, but really why I do what I do. And that is what Charles Duhigg focuses on. He says, if you can figure out why you do what you do, then you can really figure out how to change or how to do things differently. We very often hear people saying, you know, these things are done the same way. Aise hi hota hai. Okay, that's just the way it is. Is it? Does it have to be? We're talking habits. Habits are not destiny, you know, don't make them destiny. And they're not cast in stone. So, you know, how Charles starts talking about, his journey of starting this book is he relates a story about himself. And to paraphrase Shakespeare, the key question he's grappling with is to eat or not to eat. He felt he was putting on a lot of weight, and so did his wife. And he was like, how do I reduce my weight? One area where he could focus on was cookies. And he seemed to be eating cookies every day in the afternoon in office. So he said, I need to change this habit. And if I can get rid of this habit, I can get rid of some weight. And so he didn't sit back and say, okay, I'm not going to eat cookies. And I'm going to be really strict on myself, and I will have willpower. And when my heart says eat cookies, and I'm going to say, no, I don't want to eat cookies. So he didn't do that. He said, let me be logical about it. Let me figure out why I feel like eating cookies and why do I end up eating cookies. So what did he do? Every day he started experimenting. So he used to eat cookies around 3 to 3:30 in the afternoon every day. So day one, he got up as usual. When he felt the urge, he walked to the office pantry, he ate a cookie, he came back, started working. Second day, again he went to the office pantry, but he didn't eat a cookie, he took a chocolate slab instead and walked back. Third day, he decided not to go to the pantry at all. He walked around the office, went to his colleague's desk, chatted with him for a while, and came back and started working again. Fourth day, again he went to the pantry but didn't pick up anything, just took a walk around and came back. And so on and so forth. He did this for a few days, and he realized that it was not really the cookie which was the trigger for his action or the reward he was looking for. The trigger was that at that point of time, he was feeling a little bored and he needed a little distraction, or he was feeling a little tired or sleepy, and he just needed to refresh himself. Because every time he did something other than eat a cookie and he came back, he didn't feel the urge to eat the cookie. So he figured out what was the trigger and what was the reward. And then he said, let me try and change the routine which I am doing following the cue, which is if you feel sleepy or tired, the reward is that you feel refreshed and you have had a break from work. So he decided that every day he would consciously get up at 3 o'clock, and he timed himself, go and walk around the office, talk to his friend, and come back. Few days he did it consciously, and then it became a habit, a new habit. But this is the premise of his whole book, and he calls it the habit loop. You know, we've all heard this, man is a creature of habit, right? And most of our habits are in response to stimuli in the environment. So it's interesting to see and figure out how our minds work and how habits form. So Charles talks about mapping how the brain works when habits are getting formed. Okay? But before I talk about that, let me share a personal incident with you. When I was learning to drive, and those of you who've learned driving would probably relate to this. When I was learning to drive, my mother would say, you know, you've not looked in the rear view mirror when you were making this turn, and look back. And when I was looking back, she said, you're not looking in the front. And then she said, okay, you've not changed the gear and the speed has gone up. I said, you tell me to do one thing. When you're saying look in the front, look at the back, look at the rear view mirror, put on the brake, change the gear simultaneously, how can I do so many things? But as I learned and as I practiced, it became automatic. And you know, initially I used to say when I'm driving on the road, and I said, don't talk to me, I'm focusing. And now you can talk, you can listen to music, you can actually do work while you're driving. In your mind, you're thinking of something else. It becomes automatic. And scientists, Charles talks about scientists who did an experiment on a mouse. And they would put him in the beginning of a tunnel with a trap door there. And they would open the trap door, and the mice would go sniffing around, looking at the corners, figuring out, sometimes turning left, sometimes turning right, until he found the piece of cheese. And they did this a few times. And then they noticed that every time the trap door would open, the mouse would go straight through the tunnel, turn left, and eat the cheese. So he was faster, he was more efficient the second time around when he had sort of figured out what's going on. In which case you think the brain activity was higher? In the first case, when he was figuring out what to do, or in the second case, when he was doing it better and faster? So the first one, the brain activity was higher, because by the time the brain was deciding or making choices, it was working hard. When it figured out a routine, the routine went into the subconscious and the brain sort of ramped down and it became automatic. With us, habits become automatic over time. The cue, routine, reward cycle, when it gets repeated, becomes habit, becomes internalized, and we don't even think about it. So when we want to change something, the first step is step back and think, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? And what am I doing it for? Okay? Because you have to get it out of your subconscious mind again and start thinking about it. So identify your cue and your reward, and then if you change the routine instead of trying to remove it, habit change will happen more easily for us. So an example, something we can relate to, more recent example in India, when Nor Foods was trying to change habits and trying to make soups a part of daily routine in a household, they figured out that, in the evening when kids come back from playing and they are a little hungry, there is no ready-made solution usually available, and mothers don't want to feed them, just before dinner too much. So they said, okay, the cue is the kid is hungry and coming back from playing. The reward is that they want the kid to be happy and satisfied with a full stomach, but I don't want to spoil his dinner or give him unhealthy food, him or her. And so they changed the routine of saying, instead of snacks and biscuits, can you have a soup instead? So choti choti bhook mithai nor soup, that was the insight here, which they used to change a habit. He also speaks about how new habits can be created, and takes a very interesting example of how people started, the toothbrushing habit became popular in the US. Believe it or not, there was a time when only 7% of people brush their teeth in the United States of America, right? हम लोग तो दातुन बहुत ज़माने से use करते हैं, right? But and there is this another advertising guru, Claude Hopkins, who was approached to try and sell Pepsodent and increase the sale of Pepsodent. So he did a lot of research and he figured out that there is a thin film which covers our teeth, okay? And he was not the first one to discover it, by the way. Other toothpaste has spoken about it in some form or the other. But he's the first one to use it as a trigger. So all his communication, he said, run your tongue over the front of your teeth and you'll feel this film. And if you brush with Pepsodent, the film will go and your teeth will be sparkly clean. Instinctively, when you read that, you feel like rubbing your tongue on your teeth. Many of you would have done it sitting here, right? And that's a trigger. The moment you do it, and you say, oh, haan, kuch hai. And then you say, yeah, okay, I can brush it and remove it. And not only that, he added another step, and he said this tingling sensation you get when you brush, it's nothing to do with cleaning of the teeth, but it creates a craving and it creates a sensation of saying, now my teeth are clean. So if your cue can also incorporate a craving, okay, that makes it compulsively, you want to do that thing again and again, and the habit becomes more strong. So while it's good in advertising and it's good in marketing, as individuals, we can also change our habits. The time we get up, what do we do when we are sitting in a cab waiting in a traffic jam? Can we inculcate a new habit to change our routine? Can organizations use habit formation, habit loop to undergo changes? There's a very beautiful story of how Alco, which is a steel company, changed in 1987 by just focusing on one habit, which was worker safety. So Charles says, identify keystone habits. Habits which can have a domino effect, which can lead to changes in other habits. So I'm not going to share the story with you. It's there in the book, and read it. It's very interesting how only by focusing on safety, he got higher productivity and higher revenue for the organization. Last bit from my side, can we take lessons from this book in our personal life, but can we also look at how it can impact society? And if you look back at our freedom struggle, there were a few keystone changes which happened, which led to the momentum of the freedom struggle. And boycotting British goods was one such thing. If they could get everyone in India to just stop buying imported goods, it would lead to a lot of mindset and behavioral changes, which it did. So I thought this was a fantastic example of a keystone habit change. And again, saying no to crackers is something, it is an ingrained habit in us. But over a period of time, slowly and gradually, one school, one child at a time, we are changing families and we are changing things. The cue is, there is a celebration, there is a festival, the reward is you want to feel good, you want to enjoy. The routine was bursting crackers. Can we replace that with crackers with sound but no smoke? Can we replace it with lanterns which fly in the air? Can we replace individual bursting with community bursting? Change the routine, keep the reward the same. And you can change society one by one. Can you use this for road rage? Can you use this for Swachh Bharat? There can be millions of examples like this. We just need to think, pause, and figure out the right reward. We can change our lives one thing at a time, one habit at a time. So thank you very much.